Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you to this amazing speaker. Scott Province is a health tech leader and content developer whose print and web-based curricula has served millions annually across the world. Scott has worked in both the public and private sectors, creating federal educational programs and leading L&D teams from small startups to Google. Scott's work at the intersection of AI and leadership training led to an award-winning algorithm that measures how well caring gets communicated in conversations. And with that, Scott, take it away.
Thanks so much, Liz. Thanks. I'm so excited to be here and excited to talk through a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, and eager to get some conversations going in the chat. So it looks like we've already had people starting to put some comments in there. I'll be posing questions throughout, so I look forward to kind of hearing other people's thoughts as they chime in. I'll share my screen. You get access to these slides as well. So can you get thumbs up that people can see that okay? All right, thumbs up. Perfect. So yeah, looking forward to talking through this. We'll talk a little bit about a lot of different things. I'm going to be drawing on some of my background in behavioral science to talk through how change management initiatives are understood, implemented, followed up on, and some of the processes that we can do. And we'll tap into some areas outside of the quote unquote typical corporate environment, hopefully to give you some new tools that you can use. So just like I mentioned, some of the things that we'll be covering today, yeah, everything from really pulling the group and figuring out what change models, if any, have you used in your organizations, and specifically, what are some of the evidence-based practices? What are the research, the academic foundations that those models are built on, if any? Again, we'll start to probe a little bit deeper on those. And then one of my most important, valuable things that I've found is really starting to probe these different models to figure out, well, these are some great stages, or this is a great acronym, but what are the actions that I can take? So this is not just another acronym to remember, but actually something that I can do with my teams. And we'll do a little mini experiments today to help uncover some of the things that we can all do as L&D professionals to take that kind of chaotic, nebulous change environment and turn it into something really strategic. Does entropy count as a change model? Great comment. Yeah, maybe a fun, a whole different topic we could explore the state of entropy. I love that. All right, so a little bit about me. I think Liz had already mentioned a lot of this, but before my career in learning and development, actually did spend a lot of time in the behavioral health world. So I designed curricula, treatment material for a lot of different folks in very academic and highly studied and evidence-based systems of behavioral health and change management. So we worked a lot with addiction treatment, criminal justice, mental health, impaired driving, a lot of state and federal programs. And we designed a lot of different curriculum that had to be very regimented, well-tested, well-studied, evidence-based. And it's those models that I want to start to explore a little bit because I think us in the maybe more corporate-driven world can still draw a lot of information from those to connect something that feels maybe very outside of our normal scope and very academic to something that maybe we've experienced a little more in our day-to-day lives. I wanted to start with a poll question. Let's see, it's the end of March, the end of Q1, where I can't believe we're a quarter of the way through 2025. I don't know about you, but I often at this point in my year am looking back and going, did I make any New Year's resolutions? Did I forget them already? And so I'm kind of curious to know to answer on the quiz here or the little poll question here, totally anonymous. How are your New Year's resolutions? Did you ever make one? If you did you can you remember what it is now? 3 months in, have you started it, but it's since dropped off the radar, which is typically where I'm at. Have you made some progress and like, oh yeah, thanks for reminding me. I haven't done anything for that in a couple of weeks. Or you putting all of us to shame by, yep, I've made one. I'm taking action. It's going strong. All right, let's take maybe 10 more seconds to answer, and let's see what are our results here. Look at this. Okay, cool. So we've got over almost 70% of people that are just like, nope, not even doing those. A little bit of folks that have made some, not many that have started one, but are no longer working. kudos to you that are making some progress and yet it being inconsistent. And then I'm very jealous of the 12% here that have taken action and it is still going strong. You will be our inspirations, you 10 that have voted that way. So I'm eager to hear the systems that you have put in place to do that. All right, well, exciting to see our kind of distributed results there. I am certainly in that category of our vast majority here that I used to do a lot of resolutions and I've since just I don't know if it's learned helplessness or what, but I've just kind of given up of like, I can't even keep can't keep my plants alive. I can't, barely get myself dressed in the morning sometimes. So sometimes it just feels like it's too hard to set a big goal like that. One of the stories that I often tell when I think about these stages of change that I can get into and why my resolution efforts often fail is to remind myself that, when I start out with a resolution at the beginning of the year, I have this great intention, but not really any systems in place. So I've got a lot of goals, I got a lot of energy on January 1, but without any sort of system, that goal can just kind of flounder. And the tangible thing, the tangible story that I sometimes even will bring with me when I speak live is I have this belt. And I was a college athlete and spent years and years working out, hours in the gym every day. And one of the as much training I received from all of these different coaches, one thing I never got throughout all of my years was anything about nutrition management, healthy eating habits. They didn't really teach me that, and I certainly didn't explore it on my own. And so into my 20s and 30s, I just kind of continued eating like I was a 19-year-old college gymnast, and my belt was an interesting indicator of some of the fluxes that human bodies go through. You could see here I have this one little belt hole that was very well worn and kind of my typical stage right here. And then every once in a while, I would kind of flux in and out of this other belt hole, and would just not have any rhyme or reason to it. And I would just kind of realize one day, oh, that's weird. I was in this one hole yesterday, and now I'm in another one. I wonder what happened. And again, I don't really have any systems in place. So as much as I might set goals for myself or go, oh, you know what, I was really tearing through that bag of chips this last week. It wasn't really like any goals that I was setting or not setting, but I really just had a lack of systems. And for those that haven't read James Clear's book Atomic Habits, this is says it well way better than I do. But this idea of what are the systems that we can put in place so that our stages of change don't just exist in the abstract or acronym based level. And so that's what we're really going to look at now is how do we as not only individuals, I know I've been telling more individual stories, but how do we as managers of change in an organization help people recognize these staged models and then what happens in between and the systems that we can put in place. I'll kind of pause my own personal story here and throw this out to the group, especially those that are going strong with the resolutions here. But let's get a little bit more kind of future thinking. And I wanted you to put in the chat, let's all kind of flash forward into the future here, 9 months, and think that it's December 2025. Let's, for the vast majority of us who haven't made a resolution, let's imagine that we've made one, or we make one today and we stick with it for the next 9 months. I want you to flash forward into that December 31st range and think about what helped make that resolution stick. Let's imagine that we've successfully pursued this new change or continued doing it for those that have throughout the whole year. Type 1 or 2 words. What are the things that made that happen for you? You won the lottery. Yeah, I got the resources I need. But yeah, the systems that we put in place, peer support, consistency, accountability, personal motivation, discipline. Yeah, being intentional. Yeah, taking risks. Oh, interest. I love that one. Having an accountability partner, prayer, commitment. Yeah, this is really great. I love this list here. And we just got, 30, 50 examples from people, all little, 1 to 2 word hints towards some systems that we could have. Ooh, visual progress. I love that one. I'm going to actually put something on my wall here that I can visually track. Mind over matter consistency. I love this blend that we have of everything from kind of a personal, I'm gonna check in with myself or a higher power maybe. I'm going to kind of think about what is the motivation I want to cultivate internally, and then what are the action steps, the observable systems that I can put in place. Make a bet with your spouse. Yes, that one sometimes works better than all that I've tried. Very, very cool. Pride, yeah. So this idea that once I've said this publicly, maybe to an accountability partner or a spouse or a peer group, I have this pride now that okay, this is out there in the world. We're going to talk about all of those things in our systems here. SMART goals, very cool. Well, keep them coming if you more come to you. We're going to explore these in a lot more detail and see how they fit into an actual evidence-based model of behavior change. I'm going to switch over and we can kind of pause in our personal goals and put on more of our corporate or organization-based learning and development hat here, and think about some of the models that we've encountered maybe in our past experiences with change management. And I'm curious if any of you have worked with some of these models or if there's other models that you use in your organization. And I'm not intending to force rank these or say one is better than the other. I think all of these have really great pieces to them. Ad cards coming up a lot. Yep, absolutely. Cotter model. Yep. William Bridges has a great book on transitions. Again, I've encountered that a little bit more in personal change, but I think it's really powerful in corporate environments as well. Yeah, all of these. So yeah, everything from Cotter, Lewin, McKinsey. We have these really kind of pioneers, industry leaders. We have ProSize AdCar. For those that don't know I realized just now I've just put in the acronym without explaining it. So awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and I think reinforcement. Yeah, so very similar in the sense of, okay, a lot of these models talk about stages that we can go through. For Bridges, it's kind of the end stage, the neutral zone, the new beginning. For AdCar or Lewin's model, it's let's figure out our knowledge sharing, our kind of implementation process, the awareness that we need to cultivate. All of these things, like I mentioned, can have some key benefits to them, and depending on how you roll them out, can be very successful. One of the things that I found as I transitioned over from the world of behavioral health into more corporate organizational change management is a lot of these models, while they had some really great components, were not necessarily evidence-based. And I love the fact, maybe this is just the data nerd kind of side of me, but I love the fact that learning and development as an industry is actually getting a lot more rigorous when it comes to examining evidence-based practices. If any of you have been involved or swept into the debates on LinkedIn or others about learning styles, which I'm not gonna touch right now. It's again a whole different topic to have, but really, I actually really like the fact that people are starting to no learning styles. People are starting to challenge this, like, this just kind of was floating along as a framework or topic people were using until we started to really push back and say, well, has this been peer reviewed? What are the evidence based? And we can start to, again, in a hopefully healthy way, not necessarily trying to just throw any of these under the bus, we can start to look at some of these with a similar framework. When I think about Cotter's 8-step change model, this was based on kind of Cotter's observations of transformation efforts. I think worked with Harvard Business School. Again, great mind, great organizations, but kind of based on observation rather than empirical testing or peer-reviewed feedback. ProSci, again, did some great stuff in analyzing empirical data, but probably more from an industry studies-based perspective rather than peer-reviewed academic research. Not saying that one is, better than the other, but just something for us to think about. Again, Lewin, a kind of industry leader in social psychology, but this model here is a little bit more broad and oversimplified and grounded in principles rather than necessarily empirical research. So again, similar to our learning styles, which we won't touch on here, that question that we can start to pose to ourselves, our organization is, hey, as we're thinking about change management, what is the evidence-based foundations of the model that we're using? How do we know that is tried and tested and maybe will have the best application in our organizations? Or if we're struggling to actually implement a change and whatever system we're using is not working, might it be because we don't have the rigor that we might need for a model that we're implementing? So with that in mind, I'm going to introduce you to, or remind you of, if you've already seen this one, a model that exists in the world that actually does have a very strong evidence-based foundation, and it is called the trans-theoretical model of behavior change, before I show this up on screen, anyone heard of the trans theoretical model before, or the TTM? Nope. Good. All right, we got some brand new folks here, and I love the chat here. For the frameworks and models we use, always helpful to take a step back and ask what questions. Yes, what questions they were trying to answer. What was this person doing when they built this model? Oh, and we got a couple that said yes. Not yet. Absolutely awesome. All right, so the trans-theoretical model was actually developed decades ago. James Prochaska and Carlo Di Clemente, I think the first citation, one of the earliest citations of the trans-theoretical model was back in the early 80s. And so again, decades and decades ago, these leaders and others came together and said, you know what, in the world of, and they're coming out of behavioral change, addiction treatment, in their world of counseling and behavioral psychology that they were working at, they actually found, wow, we've got a lot of different theoretical models we're using. There are some overarching trends and topics that we can study. And they published, and again, this has been scientifically reviewed, published in all sorts of academic and peer-reviewed journals, recognizing that some of the theories that are used in behavioral health can be summarized in some of these broad stages of change. And that's why you have trans-theoretical. It goes across multiple theories here. And what the trans-theoretical model proposes is that individuals can work through 5 key stages of change. And we start here at kind of the pre-contemplation, and I've put in kind of the funny or a little more lighthearted descriptions of this, but that pre-contemplation stage, this is typically me now on January 1st and 2nd, which is just like, I don't need a resolution, even, and whether that's my own learned helplessness or my own, like, I'm fine. We'll just get, I'm in that pre-contemplation often with whatever challenges I'm dealing with. And then sometimes I will graduate into this contemplation moment. This is often when I do that belt buckle thing where I go, wait, how did I switch loops? Or how did I switch belt holes? I don't even know what happened, but it's aware that all of a sudden is on my radar now. And then I moved to maybe this preparation stage. That's it. I'm getting rid of all of my potato chips and I'm going to replace them with those healthy dried pea snacks because I just got to crunch on something. I want to do that. And then occasionally I will take action. And this is, again, where it gets hard. That kind of like do the actual things, walk the walk, and then establish some sort of long-term habits for this. And again, kudos to those of you that have been sticking with the resolutions 3 months in. And then occasionally, slash often, I will fall back into, you know what, never mind, this wasn't worth it. I'm going to go back into the pre-contemplation phase. It was very intentional that the stage model was built as sometimes shown as a spiral staircase or a cycle and not a straight line. Changes never smooth or straight. And yes, great question here. Is there a 6th stage, termination, permanent change? In past models, that has been shown as a sixth stage. I often see this actually designed intentionally as a 5-stage because of this kind of common or acknowledgement of, hey, it's not you don't reach the finish line and you're done. There is an ongoing kind of process and vigilance toward yes, an Escher-esque staircase. Yes, absolutely. Cool. I will pause really quick. Liz, any questions or comments I'm totally missing in the chat? I will try to keep some time for questions at the end too.
No worries. You are on top of it. All of them just really great comments. That's all.
Perfect. Love it. Well, good. So again, if this is brand new, check out the research. I don't want to be the one to just throw another model at you. So go look at all of the studies. There have been some really cool studies. And again, this comes more from the world of behavioral health. So you'll see studies about smoking cessation, weight management, exercise, a lot of behavioral health, mental health challenges, and how this type of model can really help people work through a personal change. Also, and again, I think this is actually a positive indicator of something that is more rigorously tested, is that there are limitations. There are studies coming out saying, hey, I don't think that there is a clear enough distinction for how someone moves from one stage to the other. I think there needs to be more classification for this to be considered a stronger evidence base. Absolutely, yeah. Let's keep challenging that, and I think the value of a true model is its ability to kind of have complex conversations continue around it. So that's the first benefit of the trans-theoretical model that I wanted to call out to you. Compared to some of our other behavior change models, that we might use more in organizational corporate environments. The trans theoretical model is something to check out, just simply, if nothing else, because it has a very strong evidence-based foundation. That's our first benefit. Um, Ironically enough, that's the benefit I am less excited to talk to you about. Evidence-based backing is really cool. There is another benefit to the trans theoretical model that I think is even more interesting for us. And this is going to talk, we're going to spend the rest of our session here, is if you notice the similarity between the trans theoretical model and some of the other corporate models, is they all really dealt with stages. So we had, stages of change. We have Bridges transition models of change. We have McKinsey's 7S's. We've got the ADKAR model. They talk a lot about stages. And I'm going to bring back that belt analogy because I think about the holes in my belt as kind of stages of change. Tuesday I was here, and then Wednesday I was suddenly here. I don't know why. I don't know what happened, but I'm just kind of in a different stage. And stages are great. They can help us diagnose where a team is when you're trying to implement or manage a new change across your organization. What I don't like about stages is they're not necessarily helpful in showing me what I'm supposed to do now. And so a crucial part of the trans theoretical model is, while it does have 5 stages, or like someone had mentioned, sometimes we'll show 6 stages, it is not necessarily the stages of change that's so helpful. There are actually studied processes of change that exist across and between the stages that really can help us bridge the gaps. So these are the strategies, the actions, the mental shifts, the things that we actually do that help us move back and forth between different stages here. And so that's what we're going to talk about, like I mentioned, for the rest of the session, all of these really rich and well-studied processes that hopefully you can start to take back to your organizations and implement in your change processes. All right, so I'm going to turn this back to our chat here. Get your fingers ready. I'm going to give you a little super mini case study here and ask you what you would do here. So your company is just, this is probably hopefully very accurate for people in today's environments. Your company just launched a new AI-based project management system. Cool, new system. Everyone loves new systems and changing from one to another. However, you've got one team member here who is really not interested in this software AI change. So he's not taking the trainings. He's ignoring any of the mandates that you're putting out, and he's just telling everyone else. He's actually going around and actively encouraging non-compliance with this new system. This is just a fad. They're going to swap a new system 3 months from now, and I hate to think that he's right, but maybe he is. So as an organizational leader and an L&D leader, what are some of the things that you could do right now to help with this individual? And we've got some great chat. Yeah, show it what's in it for him. I'll put even some options up here, but it does not have to be any of these 4 because we've already got some coming in. Explain why. Yeah, another good one. Any of these ones you would prefer over others? Yeah, so have him reflect on his own choices, maybe. Ooh, great from Greg. Resistance to change can mean a fear of loss. Yeah, start by understanding what they might be at risk of losing. Yeah, provide and show benefits. Stories. Yeah, share stories of how others benefited from the systems. Yeah, A or D. Yeah, find out their concerns, ask them, demonstrate understanding. Yeah. I notice people are kind of staying away from this idea of like, well, just reward it. Like give them some kudos or a extra, bonus or whatever. I think people are rightly recognizing, hey, you know what? I've heard somewhere that external motivators actually aren't super effective. Yeah, I have one right. Yeah, reward has not worked. Yeah, absolutely. Allow him to be the tester to see if the process makes him more productive. Very cool. Yeah, so similarly, rewarding, or I'm just going to replace your workflow. I'm going to force you into the system by removing the old project management. Doesn't seem to work really well. People are very creative and smart about finding workarounds, about finding their own internal motivations to drive us way more than any external motivation. And we've got really smart change managers on the call here that have some great examples here. Just pip him, just put him on a pip and he'll come around. Yes, and there's a great comment from Chasey. I often find it's lack of knowledge that causes pushback. So let's apply to our poor, fortunately hypothetical individual here, the stages of change from the trans theoretical model we just saw. So this person's likely in that pre-contemplation stage, right? So I either am not considering change or actually don't believe that there is a need to change. So in this stage, just like you were all noticing here, actually forcing actions, just saying, well, just take the training or just do it's mandated now. You're on, I'm going to pip you. You have to do this. Actually, that can actually backfire not only for this individual, but maybe for the team as a whole. And so just like you were all mentioning in the chat, our goal for those in pre-contemplation is to really raise awareness, just like Tracy and others were saying, offer new perspectives, create space for curiosity and not compliance. I love that people were mentioning, when I go back to this multiple choice question, A or D. What's interesting here is as we get into the nuances of the processes of change, and we'll do this in a second here, we might notice that if you are really strongly stuck in pre-contemplation, asking you to share how you feel about this change, if I'm not doing it in a very facilitated way, I may actually be getting you to just reinforce your beliefs that this really isn't an issue. I just thanks for asking me to share. I'm going to get on my soapbox and say why this doesn't matter. Maybe good for a brief moment, but I want to then, like everyone's saying here, how can I figure out how to empower or share stories about the good that this might potentially do? And just I just want to get you over this one little line. I want you to get into a contemplative state of, well, maybe this could have something of benefit in the future. So something that I can start to think about, doing. I think a lot of what we've been covering so far has, and again, great comments in the chat here. We can chalk up to that consciousness raising important part of pre-contemplation. Consciousness raising is actually what we call the first process of change in the trans-theoretical model. And like I mentioned, there are 10 of these. And so what's kind of cool is we've got some great examples of consciousness raising, but that's just one of the many things that we can do, even if we're just focusing on these first couple of stages here. And again, you'll get these slides, so don't worry about trying to copy down all the words here. What way smarter people than myself have done here is they've recognized that across the 5 stages of change in the trans-theoretical model, there are 10 processes, and not only are there a great number of processes here, but actually different ones can be more effective depending on the stage of change that you're working with. And so I'm going to pause here because this is a lot. There's a lot going on. But you can see here that I'm going to just introduce the first 5 of our processes of change. The processes, the actions, or the strategies we can apply, there are different ones in these early stages that can be very effective. Consciousness raising we just talked about. But there's also emotional arousal or dramatic relief. And I want you to think about these titles, maybe without even knowing exactly what they mean. Think about some of the ways that you might implement them in your change efforts. What could I do that would really arouse an emotion or kind of have this dramatic sense of relief as I go into the uncomfortable part of a change? What can I do with self-reevaluation or environmental reevaluation? I know people are talking about this, getting this individual to think about their own impact, either think about your own thoughts or think about the impact that your lack of compliance might have on an environment, a work environment. What are the things that are going on in our organization that are actually making this more liberating and more easy for this change to take place? We are having a whole change management week, workshop week, or you have 2 hours each day to actually just get used to this new system. This is a cool, socially liberating, kind of socially supportive practice that I can get involved in. What's interesting here, and what I like about not only looking at how these processes align with the stages of change, you'll notice here that they're called cognitive affective processes, and they're going to be different from the last 5 processes of change. The reason it's important to recognize the title cognitive affective here is everything that might be going on for an individual in these first 3 stages of change might be happening beneath the surface. And again, I know we were kind of joking about this idea of like, we just got this guy who's so, I got to pip this guy, or he's so resistant to change. Someone actually might be halfway through a stages of change model without ever showing anything outwardly that they are coming on board. And so again, not that this is always the case, but reminding ourselves that change might still be happening even if we can't see it. This consciousness raising and self-reevaluation and kind of awareness of the social indicators around my peers or my work environment, that can actually be going on And I might be checking these boxes either as a change leader or as an individual without even having anything necessarily tangible to show for it. So I know that that's hard, but at the same time, hopefully a little empowering in the sense that we can say, okay, this is actually good for me to know that I'm reaching these people, even if they're still giving me this face in the training world. Yeah, great point from Amanda. It's important to make connections that causes people to care and be motivated. Absolutely. Here's the other really cool thing as we learn about these processes. So not only does each one line up with some different stages of change, but there are literally hundreds of actions and things that we can do within each of these that can be empowering for our organizations. So again, let's just take one, for example. Let's just look at consciousness raising. When we think about consciousness raising as a process of change to help get people out of this like pre-contemplation, this isn't an issue, to maybe I want to make a change step. What are some of the things that we do to help raise consciousness? And I think people put a lot of these in the chat, so I won't spend too long here. But think about all the things that we do as L&D experts and as change management experts just to raise consciousness. Share a book, an article, share a white paper. I give the link to Scott's recording and go, hey, have you checked this out? Like, this is something to listen to if you're interested, just to raise our awareness of what might be going on in our world right now. Here's a cool infographic. I'm going to facilitate a brown bag or a lunch and learn session here. What are some of the other things that you do typically in your role or that you've done in your organization to just within this process of consciousness raising, just that first one there? One that I'm really interested to see if anyone's going to put in here. And again, there's hundreds of these, and you'll have all sorts of different go-to processes that you might rely on. I know that I'm a sucker for infographics. Yeah, lunch and learns, group discussions. Oh, play devil's advocate. That's a great one. I love that. Yeah, surveys. Oh, surveys and polls. Great, just statistical piece of information that again, just is raising awareness. I love that one as an example. Yeah, so hundreds of these ones. Yeah, show by doing, hands-on workshops, surveys, Q&A. So yeah, coaching, mentoring, open-ended Q&A sessions, self-assessment, quiz, webinars. Get someone else being a sucker for infographics. Awesome. I love this. So again, look through this chat list here. If you're ever stuck for ideas, we got some great ideas here. Got some that I put on the screen. Like I mentioned, there's hundreds of these. And this is just for one. This is just for consciousness raising. Remember that we've got 4 other processes of change that can be really impactful in the pre-contemplation to contemplation stages. The reason I like to start with consciousness raising is sometimes I'll do this workshop or share this with an organization as a consultant, and they say, well, yeah, I already did this, Scott. I did a training. Like, what else do you want from me? It's a good reminder, number one, that okay, yes, a training can be helpful and it can be a great way to raise consciousness, but let's remember that number one, training is just one out of a list of 100 of other consciousness raising things you could do. And number two, we've got a lot of other processes that we might be able to rely on here. So let's make sure that we're not just falling back on our kind of standard info dump training because we just know that we need to raise consciousness and that's all we can do. All right, I'll pause. Let me make sure I'm not missing any questions here. Yes, yeah. Great comment from Douglas here. Aside from the theory part of this, it's so common for leadership to jump off that cliff. It's like, wow, they're not doing anything. Change isn't happening. Absolutely right. So reminding ourselves, and again, we've got evidence-based support of this to say, hey, just because you can't see anything doesn't mean that there's not a lot of change that's happening under the surface. Here's the other cool thing to think about as we're doing, as we're throwing a training over the fence and saying, this is consciousness raising, just do it. Remember that the stages of change are really impactful and can be applied on an individual level. So if you've got a large team or an organization you are trying to manage and navigate through a difficult change process, remember that you likely have people that are in pre-contemplation, but also in contemplation and in preparation and in action. And how might a consciousness raising process of change actually be demotivating or potentially slowing down or getting in the way of your other team members who are really ready for action, who are really ready to lead the charge here? And I'm going to link back to some of the earlier comments people were making about I do mentors. I have people kind of show by learn by doing or demonstrate some of the changes. I love that combination that you're kind of instinctively going to that says, I'm gonna mix a little bit of consciousness raising with maybe a little bit of social liberation because I want to create an environment that is really going to help my pre-contemplators recognize who in the system might be really helpful to get them up and running. Any other, when we think outside of the consciousness raising section, any other actions that you really like doing? I know we mentioned already the mentorships. My favorite is actually emotional arousal and dramatic relief, and I'll share a couple of tips that I really like to do here. But any other things when you think kind of outside of the info dump training or the consciousness raising that we kind of sometimes will have to do that you really like doing as these theories? I love the social liberation where it's recognizing, what's the actual environment, especially if it's a virtual environment. How can I help draw people's awareness to, again, protected time to explore this? And explore doesn't mean force you to do this training, but just feel what this means. Yeah. Oh, this is a great comment from Tamara. I finally just asked for change management, but I think that's just communication and not actual behavior change process. Yeah, absolutely. And great, getting some great kudos on the end. Ooh, great one from Emily. Finding socially influential people in the organization. Yeah, that kind of social championing. Here's one that again, and you'll have these slides. So sharing stories that emotionally connect someone, kind of that dramatization. Hey, a customer impact story or a peer impact story. Some of these can feel silly, but they actually can be really powerful. Write a note to your future self. Dear future self, here's here's what's really hard for me, or write a note from your future self. Here's why that change was actually really impactful. Map out the environments, create a visual habit of how one small change contributes to a larger systemic benefit. Again, that environmental reevaluation step. Great examples here. And again, each one of these, you can double click on them and there's hundreds of processes and actions you can implement to help your change process not just get stuck in this. Well, we just got to raise the consciousness, or like someone mentioned in the chat, just communicate it, just info dump it, and they'll have the consciousness raising they need, and that's going to get us all the way over to maintenance. Nope, absolutely not. You got to think about all these different processes and think about how many different ones you are leaning on so that you're not overly relying on just one process over another. I know we're coming up to time and I want to save a little bit of time for Q&A here. So I'll spend a little bit less time on behavioral processes. The good news is when you get to that behavioral component, this is again where you can start to see a lot more active outward change. I know these are probably a little bit more academic terms, but when we think about self-liberation, counter-conditioning, stimulus control, helping relationships, reinforcement management, all of these can also have hundreds of different processes. Self-liberation, you might make a personal pledge like, yes, everyone on my team, we're going to sign this one little document, or we're going to vote on a survey to say, yes, I'm committed to do this. I will take action on this. Counter conditioning, I'm going to replace that old email communication thread with a more efficient collaborative system. I'm going to actually swap out those potato chips for those dried peas that because I just need to eat on nibble on something, and this is a kind of counter conditioning thing, replacing an old habit with a new one. Stimulus control, replacing kind of managing my cues and triggers. That old blue workflow link that I typically go back to, that always is going to trigger me to want to go back to the old system. I'm going to change the color of that, or I'm going to remove that button altogether. Helping relationships, just like people were mentioning here. Who are the champions in our organization that can demonstrate by their actions that they are actually taking this on? And then finally, rewards. Notice how reinforcement management and rewards really is best implemented for those that are already in action or already undertaking a change and have been for a long time. Very important to recognize the value and impact of that versus trying to reward people who are not convinced this is something that needs to happen. And again, this does not need to be monetary or point-based rewards. Maybe it's a recognition program. Maybe it's just celebrating the milestones. Hey guys, it's been 6 months that we implemented that program management, and hey, let's just take a pause and pat ourselves on the back for sticking with it for 6 months. That's huge. This is great. Storytelling, critically important. Yep, absolutely. Keeping those stories going on, and you can see this thread of storylines all the way from emotional arousal and dramatic relief, all the way up through celebrating the stories and successes. So that's really the challenge I'm going to leave you all with here. Kind of that recognition that, as we build out our change initiatives, not only to acknowledge the different stages of change that people might be going through, but to ask myself, and again, you could even sketch this out. Okay, I've got a consciousness raising step. Let's assume that I'm going to do a training workshop, or my leadership has a comm they want to share, or a memo or whatever else. That's fine. That'll get us out of pre-contemplation potentially. And if not, I've got a lot of other options. But what process is going to help my folks that are in contemplation? Maybe they need to make a pro and cons list because they're considering, like, they know all the info, but they've got some reasons why not. And I think that's really valid. And I'm going to implement that survey now to raise the pros and cons. And what are we actually doing to document and acknowledge the commitment it's going to take to switch to this new system? Because people in the preparation step are ready to make a commitment, but are we documenting that at all? Or are we going to let them slip back into contemplation by not really acknowledging the process that needs to take place here? And what do we need to do for those that are actually in action? Have we set up a system of mentors and storytellers that can show that by taking action that people are actually doing some different things here? And what are we doing to maintain this so it's not just turn it on and hope that the new thing works? All of these things can be asked and answered of yourself and your L&D teams as you think about rolling out a change effort and think about all of these different processes of change as the real firepower. Even if you don't apply the stages of change model, think about these processes and bring them back to your ADKAR or your Cotter method as ways of moving down the change management process. So I think that's the final thing I'll leave you all with. I will also recognize that, again, change is seldom smooth or straight. This is a real life example of a change kind of management process we did where as soon as one person moved up or down the list, they triggered all sorts of different other movements from other people in the organization. So we are constantly cycling and recycling through our change management process. That's not a bad thing. That's just the reality of how change works. And so the takeaways here for kind of our new blueprint: think about the trans-theoretical model, look into it as a potential evidence-based model that you could use. And again, don't just rely on the stages, but think about the processes of change. And remember that for different individuals, they're going to be at different stages here. Make sure that you've got processes that account for all of them and to be ready for kind of that recycling method. If you've got questions for me, send me an email. I know we've only got maybe a minute or so I can see if there's any other questions to answer here. But otherwise, you can probably tell I love talking about this stuff, and I'm always happy to find more time to talk. It's something that me and my team do regularly with folks. So eager to keep the conversations going.
Yeah, we have three questions in the Q&A, so let's try to address at least one of them while we have the time. So Tracy was asking, when we are planning for change, is there a way to also plan for the delay of adoption because of the emotional response to change, especially for people who haven't bought in? If
Yeah.
so, what is an appropriate time frame to consider delay as part of a rollout change successful?
I love that question, and I love the idea. Sometimes I counsel or consult with people that are worried about the relapse label too, and I for both of those, I would almost say that maybe relabeling instead of a delay or a relapse, like building those actually into the process of this isn't even a delay, it is an acknowledgement of the 2 or 3 months that we will need to move people, out of pre-contemplation and contemplate. And so I think absolutely building those in to the model is essential. And I think it's if you're ever running into roadblocks of, well, we can't delay this change anymore, recognizing that this is actually not a delay at all, but actually part of the important process that we need to go through the consciousness raising and the emotional arousal, dramatic relief impact of people are frustrated about this. We need to give space for that frustration, and it's not a delay. It is actually going slow to go fast. So that's a great question.
Yes, and with that, we are all at time. So Megan, Alicia, definitely reach out to Scott because yeah, I feel like their questions are so good. we do not have the time for. But is there anything else you would like to leave with the audience today, Scott, before we take it away?
I love the chat and the conversations going here, and so hopefully everyone has a chance to scroll back through because you're obviously your own experts here. So let's learn from each other. And please do reach out. I'm happy to take this conversation going more online offline.